All right, excellent. All right. Last week I showed several different examples of image work that people had done in previous semesters. And this week I wanted to do a couple things. Um, I would like people's input too. If we need to push back the due date for this for the carving, we can do that. Um, what I would like to do, I think today, is look at these items that have been turned in and review them with you and talk about them, and then talk about an introduction to the biomorphic carving and look at a couple things there. And I do have a video that I made that shows some of the process that I hope will help. And then next week, I want to show examples of that from previous classes, and we'll go through, we'll probably talk about the quiz as well and those kinds of things. So I think that's what I would like to do. And just as a reminder, when we look at these things that people have turned in, um, when we talk about them, we're talking about them only in relationship to the parameters of the assignment, not whether or not it's good art, because that's not. I mean, one of the problems that I constantly have over the semesters is somebody will do something that's really fantastic. It just doesn't fit the assignment. And like somebody, in another class, we had looked at prehistoric art, and the person had uh, submitted an essay about Russian photography, and they were kind of disappointed. But I was completely baffled as to why they thought that would be applicable because it had nothing to do with the writing about prehistoric art. So um, sometimes things will look really good by itself, but it just won't fit what the assignment parameters are, is what I'm trying to say. So with that in mind, I'm thinking that's we're going to go ahead and look at these, and then and we'll talk about each of them. There's five that we want to talk about. Excuse me. And then Mabel, you're really good about asking insightful questions. So at the end, if you have any questions, I would love to hear them. And then after that, we're going to talk about this next module, which is the biomorphic carving. So,
Sure.
and as is true with every time we do this, if it's I'm trying to remember to hide the names and stuff like that, so nobody knows who it is. So what I would like people to remember, whoever comes in on the call, and this is for this class and every other class, is when you see your own work, if people like it and they compliment what you've done, please try very hard to resist the temptation to say, "Oh, it was nothing," and dismiss their compliments. When you guys are doing your own exhibitions, your own student shows, and things like that, the problem with doing that is, we're raised to believe that that's appropriate to kind of downplay our own achievements. And if you don't, you actually do sound like kind of a jerk a lot of the time. But we need to find gentle ways of doing that. And the best way to do that is just say thank you, because the fact is, you want ultimately to be selling your work. And the people that like it are demonstrating to you that they have really good taste. And so it's really a good idea to avoid getting into the habit of telling them that their good taste is misplaced when they're complimenting you. So just a reminder, you don't have to be a snot about it, but I found that the best thing to do is to tell them thank you very sincerely. So anyway, as we look, let's now we've had some issues before when I start sharing the screen. So if the sound goes off, um, be quiet for just a second, and we'll make sure that everything working. All right. Doesn't, can you still hear me, Mabel?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. All right. So some of the things that we are doing in, we've talked about professional photography, and we do see this horizontal line back there, but the background is pretty consistent. I don't think that's that big of a deal on this case. It starts becoming a deal when you are taking photographs of your work and it's on a wood tabletop with white behind it, or you see the baseboard or the flooring or stuff in the background, it starts becoming a problem. And I do recommend doing your best to make your own infinity screen, and I've seen a lot of people have been doing that. And what I really like about this class is as we talk about it, people's photographs are getting better and better. So, but looking at this with in regards to the assignment, first off, there is a module, and there's an obvious module. It looks like to me that the module is a cube, and it looks to me like the skin is this person took pieces of, I'm gonna guess like different kinds of cardboard maybe, and cut them to be half the size of one of the faces and put that in, it looks like one, two, maybe on three faces of each of these cubes or more. Because I see on this cube, I see one right back there, I see one right here, I see one under here, and I see one right there. I kind of like that because they're not oriented in the same way, and it's not what we're expecting. A lot of people will cover the whole face, and so I think that that's really kind of interesting. And so that's two things that it has for it. A a cube module that we can easily identify that's repeated and almost identical, and then an interesting application of skin. Another thing that I really like is a big part of this is balancing out the skin and the structure. And what I feel is that the person who put this together, I mean, they made six modules that are identical. And then as they were putting it together, it looks to me like they rotated it around. And like last week, we talked about if, instead of just stacking things on top of each other like Legos, turn them a little bit, slide them to the side. And this person heard that. And I think they did a really good job employing different ways of stacking these and attaching them. Like, so we have this one right here that's at a little bit of an angle to the viewer. On the right, this one is leaning against it. This one further right is looks like it's rotated just a hair and almost sliding off to attach to it. So nothing is stacked like Legos. This one is set off to the side and rotated just a bit. And then these two are really interestingly attached as well. So that is really good. So that's a couple different things it has going for it. And then another one is if we look at other photos, we can see how this is moving around. But from this photo, it almost looks like it's in one plane. But the reason for that is we can't see that this is pointing towards us. This middle one is pointing away. These things are hanging out. If this person wanted to do another module and attach it right here, I think they could do that. But I think this person has tried to kind of stay away from that idea of putting everything in the same plane. And I think like one more module sticking right towards us might be okay. But I'm thinking that the flatness might be resolved by looking at other photos of it. So let me stop sharing, see if I can find another photo from another angle and see if that's resolved. Okay, hold on just a second. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. And the second photo, it does make it look a little bit flat as well. But we can see that there, like this top part goes up and then scoops around to the side. I'm thinking that this is looking really pretty good. I like the way how it might be nice to put another cube right here to kind of engage that space a little bit more fully, but I think it's pretty well done. The only thing that really kind of bothers me about this, oh, it looks like it was almost tongue depressors or something, really wide pieces of thin wood put on there instead of cardboard. The only thing that kind of detracts from this is we can see these lines in the photography. And I know that, oh, Sharon there on the faculty, she told me that there are several different AI photo helps that people can get where they can smooth out the background and make it really flat. And if you guys can get one of those to work, that'd be great. Trying to do that. But I think that this one is really pretty good. Now, Mabel, what are your observations about this sculpture?
Uh, yeah. Um, the structure, the modules are can be identified pretty easily, which is really good. Now, one of the things that I do like is the location and position of the different modules is not stacked up or not horizontal. It definitely has variety, and that's important. And now the balance between the structure and the skin is really well done. Um, yeah. The craftsmanship is not perfect. Um, this is actually my work. And I know you said not mention names, but it's hard when it's yours not to talk something about it, because the process, I mean, I was the one that went through the process, and I tried different materials, and it was looking they were looking really bad, like bad, horrible. So I tried to find the best materials I could to actually make it look better. Um, but the project itself is not aesthetically pleasing so much. So it was hard to start with to make it look pleasing. But I did understand, based on your last meeting, that it was important to satisfy the assignments requirements of each module to be recognizable. The scheme balance was important, and the location. So I actually took those three important points and tried to, uh, make them work in the project.
Well, and I think one of the things that we come across is, everybody's working with new materials, and there is some grace that I really need to extend because I would be willing to guarantee that most of you taking the class have not worked with tongue depressors and popsicle sticks to make sculpture. Now, if it does bother you that it looks out of whack and things like that, Louise Nevelson did a lot of these really incredibly cool three-dimensional collages almost that were set as wall pieces with discarded wood items from furniture shops. And one of the things that she did to kind of make it look finished and professional is she painted everything the same flat color so that all you could do was focus on the form itself. And so, if you do this and you start worrying about your own um, craftsmanship, if it is sturdy, if it's holding itself together well, and it doesn't look like, you don't care, it might be interesting just to get like a dark gray or a tan or a brown or something like that, and spray paint the whole thing the same flat color, because that's going to eliminate a lot of the little bits and bobs of glue and stuff like that and make them look like intentional texture. So that's something to keep in the back of your head as you think about this kind of stuff. But I think this worked out really well.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I thought it was gonna be easier, and when I started working on it, I was like, no way. Like the glues, I tried 3 different type of glue. I mean, it was harder than the house project,
Mhm.
honestly, for me. Yeah. So yeah,
Well,
I remember you mentioning that at the beginning, saying that this was going to be the hardest project, and I was like, wow, it really was. And I
well,
didn't
and
believe you.
especially since most of us are going to be 2D artists. We're not used to working with 3D, and that if you're a 2D artist, putting stuff together is you understand how to do that. And if you're working with 3D, there are different things, like you can use Gorilla Glue for some things, you use Elmer's glue for other stuff. It's not going to do the same thing. There's shear factors involved that some glues can handle better than others. There's weight factors, there's a lot of different kinds of stuff. And the reality is that's going to happen. I mean, sorry, a lot of the learning happens while you're doing it. So
Yeah, exactly.
it can be a challenge. All right. Okay, there we go. Okay. I'm just setting up the next image. Now, Mabel, you don't know this artist, do you?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Because it's interesting to me that they have the same number of structures as you, and they've applied the skin in a very interesting way that's similar. So I'm wondering if you guys share a class or anything like that. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, nothing. No, I don't know this person. I don't even know the name. Like it doesn't appear on my screen. And I, when I submitted mine on the discussion, this person um, hadn't submitted yet. So yeah, no.
Well, and there are some similarities that look very similar, but there's also some significant differences too. Like in yours, and the sides of the cubes that have the narrow area of the popsicle stick showing, you had half pieces of skin on all of your modules, and this person doesn't have that. And they don't use wood; they're using like a translucent crepe paper that gives it a very different feeling, and they're using two different colors of this kind of almost translucent crepe paper, which I think is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the scale is a little bit different as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, I think this one is stuck together. It's not glued together. Mine is completely glued together. Like I glue each module. This one looks like it's lighter, almost like it's not glued each model with each other. It's just stuck all together. Um, yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
Well, and this one, um, so so one thing that they did really well is there's a module that we can easily identify. I think like with yours, the skin and structure ratio are really good. I like that. I mean, we have the skin hiding some things and then framing others. And I think that there's a pretty good balance there. There's a lot of skin, but with it being translucent, it doesn't read as a lot of skin. And I think that this would read very, very differently if the crepe paper covered the entire face instead of just half of it. I think that's really interesting. These
Yeah.
little shadows in the corners kind of bother me a little bit. And I think that this would benefit from taking a photograph where the sheet is stretched just a little bit more so that they can crop those corners out. One thing that I think is interesting is that there is this kind of feeling that it is wiggling through space, but having an arch like this, it really reads as a little bit more planar. It's a little feels like it's a little bit more on the same plane. I think it's one thing I do love is that these are put together so that they rotate. It's not again, it's not stacked like blocks, and I think that is a really strong benefit. Um, but I am it, it it doesn't feel like it's fully engaging three-dimensional space, maybe, and I don't know how an easy way to fix that. Maybe moving this one towards the viewer a little bit and making this archway so it twists more as it goes through the air. Twist back and forth. Maybe that would help with that. But I think overall, this is a very good solution.
Yes,
I do.
I really like the craftsmanship, the choice of materials, the the unity of the composition. It's really good as the color choice is really light, and that's the feel of the entire, the feel of the entire piece. I do think that they could have challenge a little bit of space in a more dramatic way, would have been a good contrast with the colors. But overall, I think it's really good.
Yeah, I think that this one turned out pretty well. All right, here's the next one. I get everything all set up, and then the way the system works is once I do the page share or whatever, it resets everything I set up. So that's kind of annoying, a little bit aggravating. I this I think really engages space, the volume of space around it pretty well. The sheet, yeah, there are some wrinkles in it, but I there's no dark spots or lines or anything, so I don't think that that's too bad at all. The skin is really interesting to me. It almost reads to me like hard candy. And I see that's really kind of a fun thing to do. And I like there's three different colors and they're soft enough that there's no clashing. I think that works really well. And you do have the skin in front and behind, framing stuff and hiding others. And I think that there's a really solid balance of structure and skin. It looks to me like the module is pretty much a four-sided pyramid for the most part. But some of the things that kind of pull away from that is we have, single triangles here and there. And some of these shapes don't read like a full module. And maybe that's just the photographic view of this, but this is definitely not part of it. This is not a module. This is just a free-floating triangle. I do like the fact that with the module being a four-sided pyramid, they made one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, maybe 10 of these, which I think is really good. And I'm thinking with this triangle here, maybe there's only 8 of these, and then they made extra triangles and put in. So I think that I do like how this uses space. I do like that the balance of structure and skin I think is really good, but not sticking to the format of repeated modules starts becoming a little problematic. It makes it for an interesting sculpture, but it doesn't fit with the full parameters of the assignment. So with this, I'm wondering if this yellow has to stay. I wonder if it can be attached to another side that is part of the module, or if they need to go through and look a little bit closer at the modules and pull away the stuff that aren't modules and see how that looks. Um, but I think that the skin choice on this is really fascinating, and I think this is one is working really well too. All right, Mabel, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my first impression was the same as yours. I really liked the material choice right here. But I agree with you. I had a little bit of a hard time identifying the shape other than I can see triangles. I did notice the one single triangle at the bottom, but I'm wondering if that was necessary to balance the structure as they were building it, and then it was probably falling, and then they needed an extra foot to, to balance the structure. That could be the case. But overall, I really like how they challenged the space. Yes, and I mean, craftsmanship and photography, I think it could have been a little bit better. The fact that there are wrinkles in the back of the sheet, they also bother me a little bit because they kind of fight, because all of the wrinkles are almost like triangles. Like I'm seeing the wrinkles as triangles, and they kind of mix a little bit with the structure.
Kind of
But
conflict with the structure?
yeah, but the wrinkles in the back of in the sheet. So I
Right.
think if they probably could have ironed that or somehow edit the image a little bit so there were not so many wrinkles in the back, so it wouldn't be affecting the beautiful structure. But overall, I think it was a really innovative structure.
Yeah, I like that. And if this yellow triangle is necessary for balance, I'm thinking if there are any other loose triangles that aren't attached with a module, put them together and attach it to this one to make a module, and then attach that down at this lower portion so that that module becomes the foot instead of just a solitary triangle. And then it wouldn't pull away from the assignment parameters. I think that that might be a solution for the person to think about. All right. Okay, let's see if we can get, sorry, let's see. All right, there we go. We can see this now. This one is really interesting to me because it challenges a lot of expectations. And my initial thought on my first response to this is I can see why it needs a base because, this principal four-sided or five-sided pyramid is upside down and it needs something for the point to rest on. But having it out of stack cardboard really goes against everything else and it really detracts. So my initial reaction is if you're going to do this, wrap it in something white like the background or something like that so it doesn't look like four pieces of cardboard stuck together. And then, if this is wrapped in something white and then this first pyramid is stuck into it, I think that would be a lot less distracting. So, but that being said, what is fascinating about this is we've got 5 different modules that are almost identical shape-wise, and then one upside down one that is quite a bit bigger. It feels to me like this is a futuristic abstract interpretation of a blooming flower, which I think is really fascinating. Another thing that I really like is you look on each of these pieces and they have one or two pieces of skin on them, but they're not always in the same place. Like this pyramid and this pyramid, the one that's pointing towards us, they both have the skin in the same place. The two ones at the very bottom both have the skin in the same place. And this one in the back looks like it has the skin in the same place as the ones on the two bottom ones. And then the one on the right-hand side in the very back has skin in yet a completely different area. And I think that that is really kind of fun. We have the same module, but the skin kind of the placement of the skin changes from module to module, which I think is really interesting. I like how they're attached to the central structure. They're attached on completely different planes, facing in completely different directions. The skin is not easily predictable as to where it's going to be, which I think is really fascinating. And I think there is a really pretty good balance of structure to skin. I think that I really like this one that's and the kind of pointed towards us, the viewer. I like the fact that there's skin on the bottom, but nowhere else, so we can see through it. But this one on the right-hand side, I think a piece of skin, like right on this back panel, I think that would give it the balance. Because the skin is pretty strong here. I don't think that the central area needs skin because that's kind of covered with the uh, that seems to be balanced out by where these other almost trumpet forms are coming out. But I do think that to make the balance, this one on the right just needs one piece of skin right there, and I think that that would do it because the skin does a pretty good job of hiding and framing. Like on this one, it's framing. On this one, it's hiding. On these two, it's it's hiding. On this one, it's framing, but it almost feels like it's hiding. I think I think they did a really pretty good balance for most everything. And the central upside down pyramid or inverted pyramid, if you put any skin on that, I think it would pull away from everything else that's going on. So I don't think this piece should have any skin. And that's why I'm saying one more piece on this right hand inverted pyramid in the middle on that side that's facing away from us. I think that would do it. I think that would do it really nicely. I think this one, the sheet has wrinkles in it, and that's not a really big concern for me. What is a concern for me when you're photographing is if when you have the black background showing, after you've cropped it down. The only thing that concerns me is this dark base. If it was a chunk of wood, it would be different. It might be, if it was a finished chunk of wood, it would be totally different. But I'm thinking the easiest way to solve the issue with that detracting is to just wrap it in something white that matches the tone of the background. And it doesn't have to be exactly the same thing, but I would make sure that it's the same color white. If you want to do like a beige or a tan, I think, or any other color would be really bad. Another option might be if you have something to wrap this base in, that's the same color, same chroma as what you're using as a paper, but having it so pale that it's almost white, that would work as well. I think this does a really good job engaging the volume of space around it. I think overall it's looking really pretty good. What are your thoughts on this, Mabel?
Yeah, I agree with everything you mentioned. I do think that this one out of all of them that we've seen is the most creative one. Not that it's a competition, but I have to highlight that point because it's really, really creative. And I do think that it could have been even better with the points that you mentioned of the base, you know, trying to hide that in a way would have been would have been really, really nice. Would have given a little bit more focus to the upper structure rather than the bottom. But the fact that it's carton color, kind of, if I look at it from like far, that's the only thing I can see. I have to kind of take my eyes upward and look at the structure to be able to concentrate on the top and not really pay attention to the bottom. So that, I think, would be a huge improvement on this piece, to hide the bottom. But I do like how it almost it really challenges, your eye with the different points of the location of the pieces of the modules, and how they point almost to the same center, to the center of it, but at the same time, the larger part, like the squares side of it, kind of point out like a flower, right? So it's kind of very pretty effect. So yes, I agree with all of it.
I really like the fact that none of these square bases have any sides that are parallel to any of the other bases. It feels like they are just kind of exploding out, and their skinny points are towards the center, but no two line out, no two point to the same area. I think that's really interesting. And believe it or not, stuff like that, so that it almost looks random, that is harder to do so that something looks random than most people expect. Because if you did do it completely at random, your brain would start seeing the relations. And then if you want it to look random, you have to go in and tweak it so it reads as random. Because otherwise we start seeing patterns. So that's something else that I think is interesting about this one. It's really difficult to get it to look, something geometric, to make it look like it's formed almost organically. So that's really fascinating to me. All right. So this is the last one we're gonna look at today. This one reads as really, really, really tiny. And so these modules, I don't know what the modules are. They look so small. I wonder if they're small tetrahedra with like one triangle that's a lot smaller than the others are long and skinny. But this also has flat triangles here, and this shape up here doesn't read like it's a module. So I wonder if this is the module. And each of the modules are supposed to be about the size of a fist. And so this reads to me as very, very, very tiny. And if that's the case, then there should be a lot more modules. I think that the shapes are really interesting. This is very intriguing. And I think that the solution for the skin and structure balance is really interesting as well, because you have this almost, this diaphanous taffeta almost that's being wrapped around, so that you can only really tell it's there when you look at it sideways like that. Otherwise, if you look at it directly on like this, it becomes almost transparent. And I think that that's really interesting. And I don't know if I have a problem with that, because, the skin is supposed to both conceal and frame the structure. And I think with it being this transparent, that starts to do some of that. Like right here, the pink almost acts like a solid right through there. And here, when we see it in this way, it reads as transparent, almost not there. and then we can kind of see light shining off of some of these others. So I think that that's a really interesting approach. Um, the 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 two things that, and I think that the background, they did a good job with photographing the background with the sheet and stuff. And I had mentioned at the very beginning, you don't need to iron the sheet unless there's an awful lot of wrinkles, and I don't think that that really bothers me. This kind of background, there are wrinkles, but I showed you a picture of the piece that I did, and there were wrinkles in the background too. That's I don't think it's enough to really distract from it. But with this being so small, when the picture was taken, it cast this really harsh shadow right there. That kind of a shadow gives us a really small scale, and it kind of detracts from the piece. So what I would recommend is with this one, I think this could be incredibly cool with these modules being so tiny. If the person doesn't want to remake it, I would make like 20 of these modules with them being so tiny, and 12, 20, something like that. But get rid of the flat triangles and put these modules together. So in some areas they look like a porcupine, and in some areas they look like a trumpet flower, like the other one that we just finished looking at. It would be really interesting to see something like that. See it stacked up. So, maybe you can see hollow spaces on the inside of it. And but if the person's going to make modules this tiny, that does go against the parameters of the assignment. However, to counter that, if you make a lot more of them and maybe put 4 or 5 of them together and make new modules like that, that would be really interesting, because then your module does become something that's about the size of a fist or a baseball, and but that would mean making um, probably about 20 of these. Putting 4 or 5 together for each module. But I do like how this is starting, and I think that's really important. I think that I think it has a potential of going in a really, really good direction. All right, Mabel, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I also agree with you in the fact that it's a little bit hard to identify the modules. But I think it has, just like you said, something interesting, and the fact that it makes me want to separate each one of the little pieces and kind of explore what would they do if I take them apart and start stacking them in different kind of challenging the space a little bit more. They're very stuck together, and I think they need a little bit of air, because I do like how the choice of the material, the choice of adding tool to it. It's almost like a ballerina kind of. I can see the head, I can see the arms, I can see the bottoms, like it's almost like a tutu kind of skirt. And I just want to make it almost like, um, you know, just it needs a little bit more air in between to bring it out to space. And then that's how you're gonna the person will solve the fact that the scale is so small and you can tell it's like teeny. But yeah, I think it's going a good way. It's going in a good way, but it needs a little bit more refinement.
Yeah, I think so. Now, I like that assessment. I do want to mention that last semester I had somebody who their first thing, they didn't understand about the module at all, and they made scales, and this whole thing looked like a flat plate of scales. And so I told them that this doesn't really fit with, I explained the modules a little bit better, and we talked back and forth a bit. Their next submission, they made tetrahedra, four-sided pyramids, and each of the pyramids were they used the scales that they had made. So these pyramids were all about an inch by an inch. And again, they kind of bunched them all together so it was a flat plane of pyramids. And we talked back and forth, and going back and forth, they started doing things like referencing pufferfish and hedgehogs and uh, animal nests and just different things like that that they started thinking about. And we went back and forth. I think they had 6 different iterations, and by the end of it, the thing was it was amazing. They had made about 30 or 35 of these little 1 inch triangles and put it together like a cross between, if you can imagine this, an architectural building and a hedgehog and a robot from the future. And just because of the way that they did it, it ended up being really very spectacular. So, there are, if you guys don't get the points that you want, what I'm saying is keep going, keep talking to me and keep resubmitting, because by the end of that exchange, you're going to walk away with a really good grade, and you're going to have something that you're going to be really happy that you're finished with. But something to definitely something to think about. But yeah, thank you, Mabel, very much. I really like looking at what people have done, and I'm very pleased that several people were able to get stuff turned in so we could look at it. Now, I want to let's see. I'm going to share my screen again, and I want to. So this is module 3. This is the module that we're talking about right now, structure with the skin. This is what we did. And I want to show those 3 student examples again and talk about them just a hair. Um, out of these 3, I think these 2 are the most successful. And out of these 2, I think this one is the most successful. We talked about that, and I think everybody understands why. And I think that you guys are really going in a good direction. So please hurry. Go back if you need to touch up anything, if you need to photograph anything, go ahead and do that and resubmit it. Um, when is the midterm break?
I have no idea. Okay, I wanted to ask you, sorry, going back to the structure of a skin and then some people not understanding what a module is. One of the explanations right there on the structure of the skin, yes, it says that they don't need to be exact duplicates. It says on the construction, 8 hours at the bottom, one, like scroll down a little bit. It says the modules do not have to be exact duplicates. And this is probably why, for example, in the case of the pyramid, the kind of a pyramid type of the candy paper that you mentioned, they had that single triangle at the bottom. Maybe this is why they were probably okay with that one not being the exact module as the other pieces. So I don't know if we have to clarify that in the explanations. It's like, are we
Well,
going to work?
I don't think so, because when I talk about a module, we're talking about a construction. And a single triangle is a face of a construction. So, if we're talking about variation, then that thing that had the pink trumpets kind of coming off,
Uh-huh.
that's a perfect example, because each one is a little bit different. Yours, each one was just a little bit different. The one that we saw right after yours, each one was absolutely identical. And I think that's pretty good. But if you just have a single triangle, that's not related to a module.
Okay.
That's
And then
part of
I
a
have
module.
another question. For
Okay.
example, when I'm just looking at it from a standpoint of a student, like reading and trying to understand what the parameters of the project is, because I did have that question in my mind. When I read it, I did not understand exactly, and I did not understand what they meant with module. So
Okay.
what can we add something for the future students, because we're almost done with this, but I'm talking about like next classes for the students, so the interpretation of this project is more clear. So for example, what a module means, because that is very general in a sense. I don't know, am I not, I'm just learning, so the vocabulary is not, I don't have that vocabulary, and the definitions of things very, you know, in the tip of my tongue, right? Like I just
I
need to
think
know
that's a really good
exactly,
observation.
you know.
I think that that's a good, solid observation because if I did something like put a link to that polyhedra.net website right there, and then say, look at this for inspirations for a module, and a module is a three-dimensional structure that is, a geometric three-dimensional structure. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get to that website, and it looks like there we go. Okay.
Because I did not understand this project, and I emailed you about it, right? Until I email you asking, should I do this? Should I do that? Or what am I supposed to do? Like I was confused for several days.
Okay, I see what you're
So
saying. Yeah. And I think that if I reference this and I give some clarity as to say something like the module needs to be a three-dimensional geometric construction.
yeah, that's really clear.
You know,
I think
a
that would
simple
really help.
three-dimensional geometric construction. I think that's a really good one. Yeah, I've taught this for 6 years, and you're the first person that has really articulated that question. So I appreciate that, and I think I understand what you're saying now. But yeah, so I I think that this is a really good website to look at. And I think what I'll do is I'll have people look at it and say, look at something that is 4, 6, 8 sides to inspire you as a module because it needs to be a three-dimensional um, geometric construction. And even something like this, where you have a triangle at one end, a triangle at another end, and then three squares around it, that would be a really good module to work
Yeah.
with.
I think your future projects teacher will be improved, and you won't have the issue that people won't know what to do, because they'll understand what an actual 3D module is that you're expecting, so far as being geometrical, and they'll have that, down in their minds, and they'll be able to, execute it a lot better, clearly.
Okay. Because what I will do then is I'll work on that and make an initial change tonight. And if anybody has some questions about it, just give me a holler. All right, excellent. Great. Excellent. Okay. Okay, as we go back to this, one thing I did want to do is look at the quiz a little bit. And this is really frustrating me, this quiz thing, because I've been back and forth several times, and I do not understand um, why the images are not showing up for everybody.
So
Because
the
half,
images don't show because the link is broken, because at the end of, if a link is broken digitally, it means that the end link, so what you're linking, that person, I mean, whoever code that image, it's completely gone. So it's not a problem probably of Canvas, it's at the end of the
well, actually, that
link.
that
You know
doesn't
what I'm
apply
saying?
for the quiz
It,
because none of these are links.
but what you can do, I don't know, this is another idea that might be stupid, but um, maybe just send an announcement and just add the picture there. So before the quiz is due, like, when you open the module, to say this is the image for the question of that's in the quiz. So everybody has that picture, that image. So we're not looking at trying to find the image online, because I also had to find it. This is happening, for all of the students. So maybe some people will stop the quiz. They're gonna get worried. You're gonna get thousands of emails. So it's kind
That's
of,
the thing. I'm going to interrupt you. That's the thing that's really baffles me because it's not for all the students. That's the thing that confuses me so much because when I go in and look at this with a tech person, it looks perfect. It looks
yeah.
just like this.
I
There's
don't
no
know.
links. I have the images embedded. They're just fine. What frustrates me so much is about a third of everybody is missing those things.
Yeah.
And
But
when
don't
I
get
make the
frustrated.
changes like you're talking
Yeah.
about, it doesn't it doesn't impact everybody who's having the problem.
Yeah, but
And
don't get
that's the thing that's
frustrated, because
frustrating.
it's like such a minor thing. You can just send an announcement saying this is the image, or just have a PDF ready right there in your announcement. So send it via email to everyone. Say, these are the couple of pictures that you're going to be asked about in the quiz, or something like that. It's not.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that because the quiz needs to be self-contained. But between now and that time that we get it fixed, it looks like I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to have to send out images like you're saying because the quiz itself should be completely self-contained, like it is for like the other section I'm teaching. Nobody's having a problem,
Yeah, that
and
is so
this
weird.
section,
Yeah.
a third of the people are having a problem. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's so weird. So Mabel, I think what I'm going to have to do until I get that fixed is like what you're saying. And I think I'm also going to have to, on each of these images, I may have to put, okay, I have the title here so people could do a search for them, but I wonder, yeah, all the images are labeled so people can do a search for them. I may have to just put it into a PDF like you're saying until we get this sorted out and figured, because I do not know what's going on. And it doesn't make any sense. Why are 12 out of 15 students getting it perfectly?
But you don't know,
You
like,
know?
I didn't email you about it. I just looked at the, maybe you're counting me as one of the ones that had it because I didn't email you, but I didn't. I also had it, I couldn't access, but I didn't email you about it, because I was able to just find it and get it done, get it over
Right.
with, So you don't know, maybe it's happening to everybody, but half of them or a third of them are not
Well,
telling you.
I know it's not happening to everybody because people have told me that it was fine. So, but that it is frustrating that the people that it's happening to, if it gives you a problem, and I have not sent you a PDF with the images like Mabel suggested, let me know because it should not be happening for anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing that baffles me because this class is an exact um, uh, clone of the other section that is perfectly fine. So yeah, I just don't get it. But okay, Mabel, what I will be doing then is before quizzes are due, I'll put the images into a PDF and attach it to and send it to people. That's a good idea. All right. Now, in this, and almost everybody got it. When we talk about delineated forms, what we're talking about, if you guys remember, the implied lines are lines that don't actually exist, but your mind fills in. And when we're talking about delineated forms, what we're talking about is the forms within a piece that are made not by actual lines, but ones that our minds fill in. Like for this kind of structure, the ladder becomes a circle, and that shape within, but this big circle there becomes a delineated form, and between the rungs and the sides of the ladder, those become delineated forms too. The lines aren't drawn out, they're made because of the sculpture. And what is really nice is that everybody has read the textbook and everybody got that question right. So that's really great. Um, and talking about this, it sometimes people it looked like people understood it, but they didn't explain it very well, or they missed completely the area where it says, "What would it look like if there was not the uh, negative space?" And so when you guys look at your quiz, if you don't have perfect points, look as to what I say, because I will always mention the numbers of the questions as to what they are missing and where the answer can be found. And sometimes, the answer it's going to be as easy as just look at the textbook again. So we'll go back to this. And again, on this one, the share is just once you get it done, you post it. Now, whether or not you get perfect points in the sculpture that you turn in, if you post an image of it, you get the points for that. So getting 5 points for posting just means you posted it.
You still have the paper models of polyhedra on the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you for telling me that.
No problem.
Okay. What I was talking about with the delineated forms on this, we have the circles of the ladder. Those two circles are delineated forms, and the rungs of the right here, these rectangles, are delineated forms. And then the other thing I was talking about was negative space here. Some people missed the part of the question where it asks, what would it look like without the negative space? So the negative space on this are these areas like under the foot, under the knee, around the hip, under the arms, around the head. Negative space is just the volume where the sculpture is not. And if this did not have negative space around it, it would just be a big block of stone and incredibly boring. When you construct in 3D, what is amazing to me about Henry Moore is that he paid attention to how shadows would look, how shadows would feel, how that would contribute to the structure. He paid attention to where in the structure the air looked like it was supporting it. Where did the sculpture look like it was leaning against space? Where did it look like um, it was cohabiting space? Where did it look like it was playing with it? Alexander Calder was another 3D artist that really paid attention to those ideas. And again, in all of these, the answer itself as to which one you pick is less important than how you talk about it. Like in these three, whichever one you pick, as long as you talk about it well. And most people have been doing a really good job with that. And I think for sometimes explanations like in this one, and we've talked about this in previous recordings, each of these scales need to be addressed somehow. And most people are getting that. And there was a couple of people that missed that. They just talked about why scale is important. And I said, you only got this many points because you need to talk about each scale. And one person within 15 minutes had made the correction and resubmitted the quiz. And this, you have the structure is really apparent here. The skin is really apparent here. Which is more important? Again, the answer does not matter, but what matters is how you talk about the answer. If you feel that the skin is more important, describe why you think it is. If you feel the structure is more important, describe why you think the structure is more important. So I think Mabel's talking about clarifying what a module is. I will fix that, and I think for like this week, I will work on this doing the PDF for images of the quiz, so that everybody can see that, and I will send a PDF with those images out so everybody gets that. The answers to this quiz are all in the textbook, And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but every quiz has a couple different, oh, okay, these links are, or these images are definitely missing. This is my master copy and they are missing, so I will have to go back in and fix that. Let's see if there's any others. Okay, it looks like that's the only one. So I will send that to everybody. But each of the quizzes has something in it that is a zinger where you're not going to get if you don't read the textbook. Like the first quiz, I think it was about what's the best definition of a line. And the best definition of a line from the quiz is not what you can find about the best definition of a line if you look it up on Google. So, all right, now this next module, this one we're working on next is the carved biomorphic form. And next week, I'm going to talk a little bit more about biomorphic abstraction. There is a PowerPoint that you guys should be able to get because it's supposed to be attached. If it's not working, let me know. Actually, I think I'm going to talk through this really quickly here. And then there's only 8 slides. And then I also want to share with you, you have a link when you go into the assignment to this video and where I show what the process is. And I want everybody to watch that. So it is a pretty long video, but you can speed it up and you have to watch it with the sound. I think I may have put music to it. I probably didn't. Probably really boring. But it kind of shows what the process is of the carving. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this portion here. This next section, biomorphic abstraction. When we talk about abstract, a lot of you guys are trained to do things realistically, to portray things realistically, or at least readable so that it references realism. And in this class, we've done a lot of stuff where, and we will continue to do stuff where we start dealing with forms away from realism. Whether or not you can recognize it is less important. This last thing that we did, nobody's making a face or anything like that, or kitty cat out of triangles or anything like that. The structure with skin is something that's called essentially non-objective. You're making a geometric form and you're repeating it and you're dealing with a solution. You're not making something that's supposed to look like something you'd recognize in the real world. Now, if we look at this on a scale from something you don't recognize to something you do recognize, I think that, I even have a little hint here. This is a tree. It is identifiably a tree. It's a painting of a tree, and it looks very realistic. If we look at this is Hudson River School painting, early 19th century. And again, if we look at this, it is very realistic. These are obviously trees. This is obviously, a cow. This is obviously a person in a boat. They're not really in focus. We can still tell what they are. It looks very realistic. It reads very realistic. These are obviously mountains. These are obviously clouds. This is something that is romanticized, but it references something that we can go to the Uintas and see some trees like very similar to this. We can go up on a ridge and see some landscape that is very similar to this. This is recognizable. But as we start moving towards abstract, what we do is start moving away from the things that share a visual language with what other people expect. This is one of the big transitions that took place towards the end of the 19th century when artists gave themselves permission to create stuff that showed the world as they were thinking about it. Because the reality is very, very few people can draw or paint what they see. Almost nobody does. Uh, Almost everybody, however, draws or paints what they think about what they see. Now, this artist saw specific things and they painted things so that visually you see a texture that corresponds with what they saw. And they're thinking through the process of that texture and how it will demonstrate something that approximating what they saw. But they're not painting what they saw. Again, they're painting what they think about what they see. And when we move into Impressionism later on, that was an art movement where the artists were really interested in sharing how their brain was processing what was around them. Now, this is not Impressionism. This is actually Chaumet style miniature painting. It originated in India and Iran, in that part of the world. But this reads as a tree. We can tell it's a tree. Obviously, these are birds. But Mabel, what is the first thing that you recognize that is different about this tree than any other tree you've seen? What are some of the things that are very, very different? I'm sorry, Mabel, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted. I muted myself because I was coughing. I was coughing and then I forgot to unmute when you asked me. So I was talking. I was saying that the 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 colors are maybe I won't start with that, but the shapes are more basic than naturalism. Naturalism is definitely what you just showed at the beginning, right? But this one, the shapes are very well formed and they're really unified, which it doesn't happen in naturalism. So they're very
Right.
defined.
Yeah,
Yeah,
these
that's
leaves are all almost identical.
exactly, which it doesn't happen in naturalism.
Right.
It's not what
And
it
they're
is.
all flat. They're none of them are side on or at an angle. They're all flat. We can see the whole leaf. And if you've ever seen a flowering tree, how many times have you seen a flowering tree where all the blossoms are facing you?
Never.
Never. Yeah. I mean, if that happened in the real world, I would run screaming to escape. I mean, it would be terrifying, you know? But this starts looking like almost like a botanical illustration where the pinned out plant is replicated, but this is very stylized. We're seeing kind of an evolution of intentional stylization. The artist wants us to read this as a tree and recognize it as a tree, but they also are sharing it as almost a pattern. You know that the background is covered with grass simply because we have these 5 or 6 things that look like blades of grass in this little pattern that's repeated. It's not identical. These two are almost identical, but I mean, it's repeated over and over again, and it tells us that this is grass. Interesting thing about this, the influence of Plato's writings in the Muslim world started showing up on how they did their Shahnameh or miniature painting. And one of the things that Plato talks about is the idealized realm or the world of the ideal, where in this realm is the perfect tree or the perfect tuft of grass or the perfect bird. And so uh, as those writings in the 7th and 8th century started to become more popular across the Muslim world, by the time that we get to the 11th and 12th century, which is consistent with when this was done, paintings of this nature were done specifically to replicate or reference the world of the ideal, that where the perfect tree might be, where the perfect blade of grass might be, or the perfect bird. And so it was less interesting to the artists to draw birds that were completely natural, or to draw or paint a tree that was completely natural, because what they were trying to do in sharing these stories that they were illustrating was communicate these stories are timeless. They're outside of time. And so we will illustrate them using stylized versions of plants and animals to demonstrate that this exists in that world of the ideal that Plato was talking about. And, from uh, within 300 years after Plato wrote that out, uh, that world of the ideal became a reference point for heaven. So Christians used it, and as well as later Muslims. Zoroastrians used it as a reference point in the fifth and sixth century. But that's one of the reasons why we see this type of stylization, because it's an indicator that this story is to be read not as actual history necessarily, but as a story outside of time that everybody can access and learn something from. So anyway, that's the rationale behind the stylization. But here we have another depiction of a tree. This is the state flag of New Hampshire. One of the things that the people that organized the state of New Hampshire enjoyed was that they not I enjoyed isn't the right word, that they committed to is Patrick Henry's statement: the tree of liberty must from time to time be watered by the blood of patriots. And so New Hampshire, in patriotic zeal, they have this image of a tree on their flag with this red field. This represents um, sacrifice, the sacrifice that people need to make for freedom. And this is from the perspective of New Hampshire. Now, this reads as a tree, but again, Mabel, if you and I saw this in the real world, for me personally, it would freak me out because trees are not a flat green color, and we see the branches. This is a silhouette. If I saw that as a shadow, then I'd be fine. But if you saw this out in the middle of a forest, it would be freaky. So this is even a stronger stylization. And this starts demonstrating the influence of dingbats, which in newspapers, they were used as little simplified images to fill up what would otherwise be blank space. But there is an accepted visual language in the 18th century where people identify this silhouette, this shadow, as being a tree, even though it's very stylized. Now, if we look at this is kanji, Japanese kanji for the word tree. And if we look at these two, we can kind of see this horizontal line might be a horizon line in the background, or maybe it's the root line or the root ball line. This represents a trunk, maybe. So we have this very strong stylization of a trunk. And then these diagonal lines represent those limbs and the outside row of the limb. And again, it's very stylized. And this is where we start getting to a point where the stylization starts moving so far away from an identifiable object that it becomes like letters in an alphabet, where they no longer have a one-to-one correspondent with anything in in the actual world, but it becomes a full symbol for something. And this is where we start getting into very strong abstraction. And then we get this. This is actually painted by a friend of mine. This is a stand of poplar trees. And you can kind of see them if you squint your eyes and use your imagination. But it's so abstracted that the only reason we know that they're trees is because the strokes of green paint are approximately the right color and they're in the right direction. Now, this, keeping up with the theme, Mabel, would you be surprised to know that this is Pete Mondrian, a painting of a landscape?
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. It's what he did. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
he
it,
abstracted everything.
and he was living in a world where if you saw some pictures outside of some of the cities that he of the time, there were so many cables going back and forth, so many visually raucous images that it made it very difficult for people sometimes just to navigate this emerging world. And what Pete Mondrian did is he would take the natural world and simplify it to horizontal and vertical lines and then very few colors.
Yeah, I absolutely love that artist, and I like, I kind of tend to design with that in mind, like very technical, very geometric. I love that when it's flat drawing and all of that. It's really nice. I like it. Yeah.
Well, I have been challenged when I show this picture and people say that is not a landscape. Well, it is. These are the clouds, this is the horizon, and this is the activity going on in the park, and these represent trees and people, the vertical lines. How do we know that? These are all painted over a span of about 40 years by Pete Mondrian. He was an abstract expressionist. He loved impressionism and expressionism. And I'm sorry, not an abstract expressionist. He was an impressionist and an expressionist. I'm not showing any of his impressionist paintings, but all six of these are of a tree. And this is how he developed into this kind of a landscape. And you can see him pulling further and further away from the natural world, where he's sharing fewer and fewer um, ideas with what everybody else is seeing, till we get to the point where this is inspired by a tree, but unless you know his philosophy, it's impossible to see the tree anywhere there. And completely it becomes a non-objective appearing artwork, where even though it is literally abstract because it's so simplified, but it has its origin in the natural world or in the shared world, it looks completely non-objective. It looks like just lines and blocks of color, and that's it. And this is the kind of span that I want everybody to be thinking about. I don't want you to do this, though, for the sculpture. I want you to start looking at this one right here. This is the third tree in the series. And what is amazing about this is there is elements of the tree to it, but what Pete Mondrian is exploring is the curving lines. And that's it. He's just enjoying the curving shapes of those branches. He doesn't want you necessarily to think about it being a tree, but he is just sharing with you just how those branches kind of sway and how they curve in space. And as you are working on your your biomorphic abstraction carving, I want you to be thinking about those kinds of shapes. We don't have a lot of time, but I want you to, this is me working with the block. And instead of trying to make anything, I'm not trying to make a little dog or a poodle or anything like that. What I'm actually doing is carving forms that are inspired by the natural world. Like, what if there's a passage on a piece of coral that you really like, or you have a cactus at home, or a succulent, or something like that, and you like that, or you just finished eating chicken and you really like the knuckle bone shapes in the wing bone of a chicken. Those are the kinds of shapes that I want you to, and we will talk about this more next week, like I said, but those are the kind of shapes that I want you to be inspired by as you make this carving. Okay, and you can kind of see how the shape is organic, meaning there's not harsh lines. Oh, and I'm trying to find another good photo of that object, and I'm okay. Here we go. Nope, that's not it. I'm sorry. Um, I was trying to find something areas of this video that I can show you where you can really see the three-dimensional form that I'm carving, but I'm having a hard time seeing that except for when I pull it up and show it. Okay, there we go. There we go. And I blocked the sound on this because otherwise you'll be infected by my obnoxious nasally voice. Okay, there's no geometry to this. And I started off with the same kind of shape of block that you guys all have. And I demonstrate, I want you to watch this whole video. Um, and you can have it on the background while you're doing other things, but I want you to watch it because I go through the process of how to carve it. And again, we'll talk more about it next week, but you can see right away the biggest difference between this and what we just did is we're not working with geometry. We're working with natural forms. This is inspired by shapes like shoulder blade or scapula. This is inspired by holes in basalt rock or pumice, um, leaf forms, or different things like that. All those kinds of things help to inform this shape. It's called organic because it is not um, evenly structured, and it is biomorphic because it references uh, real world organic shapes, real world bits of bodies and plants and things like that. And it's an abstraction because I'm not trying to make a one-to-one replica of anything. It doesn't symbolize. I mean, it's not pointing to any specific item in the real world. So that I'm that is pretty much what I want to share with you guys today. And we are going to talk more about it. Oh, and I'm going over just a minute. We're going to talk more about it next week. And I'll go through that video a little bit slower. We'll go through the process. And if you guys feel I need to, we will extend the due date on that uh, for a week as well. I'm kind of hoping that people are going to have some stuff to show anyway, so we can talk it through. But any last questions before we wrap stuff up today, Mabel?
No. No,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. And thank you very much for looking at those objects with me that have been turned in. And I hope you guys have a safe and wonderful weekend. And I look forward to seeing everybody next Wednesday.
Great. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you later.
Goodbye.